As we think about this in real terms and in an actual classroom setting, what would a teacher look for in such a child, or even a parent, to be able to even consider this as a possible explanation for the child's findings? I mean, can you give
Well,
us
I think that they would begin looking at some of those traits and characteristics that we just discussed. And that list, as I said, is just a very micro scope of some of the characteristics. But even if you're unsure, I would always advise a parent as well as the teacher to ask the multidisciplinary teams that are available at each building school level. That's kind of a requirement, federal and state requirement, to look at that child. Some school districts have what they call care teams, and those teams are just a team of educators at that building, the counselor, the regular education teacher. It could be also your reading teacher, your speech pathologist. And so they bring that child to that care team to say, this is what I'm seeing in the classroom, or the parent have brought these concerns to me as a classroom teacher. So what do we know about the child? And so at that time, that team would look at the school district-wide assessments. They would look at the child's history in the school settings, how they are performing, and what's going on with them then. And based upon that Informa data, then that team then would determine whether or not they want to look at additional assessment. And that's when you would get into the standardized assessment with individual testing.
I see. As a parent, particularly in the setting that we're in now, with either virtual education or some hybrid form where it's a mixture of classroom and virtual learning, how can a parent assess their child's strengths and their challenges?
Well, as a parent, I would be looking for if a child has been given, let's just say, a reading assignment where they are to read a passage and then write in their own words, for example, what they've read. That's checking for knowledge. And if I'm that parent and I'm seeing that my child can read that information, but they're having a they're struggling and understanding what it is that they have read, then I'm going to probably have some questions about what's going on. Or if this is a child where they have read the passage and they understand it, but then they have a really difficult time in writing it, whether it's typing it or doing it by longhand or whatever required. And if they're having a really problem in getting that information transformed from their brain to the computer or paper, then I'm going to probably think something is going on, because we know that children do have problems with processing. We know that they have difficulty in written expression as well as oral expression. So it doesn't mean that they don't have the ability, but that they are having difficulty in communicating that information that they know to you. So any of those things that you see, and as a parent, I would not be embarrassed or shamed out of inquiring. That's what schools are for, is to teach children. And they do have resources within those buildings to come together with the parent being a part of those teens to try to figure it out.
Great, great. So, given the size of most classrooms, anywhere from 25 to 30 students, how difficult is it for a teacher to be able to figure out if there's a child in that classroom setting?
Well, it is difficult. I've been one of those regular ed teachers. It is very difficult, but again, keep in mind the teacher is not making that diagnosis. What they're doing is just reporting what they see. And as a classroom teacher, even if you have 20 to 25 children in a classroom, they're all diverse learners. And so I would be real concerned if a classroom teacher told me that all of her children, or his or her children, are learning at the same rate, learning the same way, and the same pace, because we know that children are either auditory learners, or they are visual learners, or they are multidactic learners. And so as a classroom teacher, you should be differentiating that instruction anyway to meet the different ability level of those children. And again, if they are having difficulty with that, that's why you have the other resources within the building that you may want to call the speech language person in that building and ask them to come to the classroom and observe Johnny. Tell me what you see. Call the reading specialist in and have them to work one-on-one and see what they are seeing. So use the resources. But yes, it is difficult in just programming for the child that we consider to be, quote, normal, whatever that is. But when you get into trying to identify the child that is twice exceptional, it takes a multidisciplinary team of professionals that have expertise in varied areas.
So then it sounds as though either the teacher or the parent can question or ask for an evaluation of the child to see if he or she meets these criteria. Is that correct?
Most definitely. And the parent always, the rights are in the hands of the parent. So the parent always have the right to ask. Now, during that process that we talked about, there may be things that the team agree with the parent that they want to try. They want to, it could be something as simple as the student might not be able to identify with their teacher. That happens. Children are children. Sometimes they will decide that they are not going to work for that teacher because they don't like that teacher, or they think that teacher don't like them. So, but you don't let that child just sit there and flounder and flop. That's when you get together and say, well, maybe if Johnny is not working well with Miss Luster, then maybe they may work very well with Mr. Allen or Mr. Jones or Miss Audrey. So it's those kinds of accommodations that you want to make sure is happening at your building level.
So I guess then, with the complexity of these children, at what age do you usually pick them up?
Well, now that we have, and that's why the twice exceptional for me is so exciting, because we now are required by law to provide early childhood special education for 3-year-olds. And so we know that we have gifted kids that are gifted much earlier than that. So we would, again, as a parent, if I'm seeing that I have a preschooler that is academically advanced beyond their years or what's expected, then you need to be talking to your school district. Um, it's required by law that each school district in the United States do what's called child fine. The child fine is most often related to the child with the disability, but it can also find that child that is gifted. So again, the resources are there, and if the child is not identified, then it's usually because there's been a lack of inquiry.